The $12,000 suit was ruined, wine spread across Italian silk like blood on snow. But Clara Hayes didn't flinch when Ethan Vale screamed in her face, didn't apologize when the billionaire called her worthless trash in front of Chicago's elite. Because she knew something no one else in that glittering restaurant knew. This man had killed her father. Not with his hands, but with his greed. And tonight, after 6 years of silence, after watching her family burn while he built castles, she was done being invisible. Want to see how a waitress destroys a billionaire with nothing but the truth? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The reservation book called him Mr. Vale, Table 12, VIP. Clara's manager, Dennis, had pulled her aside 20 minutes before the shift and spoken in that hushed, nervous voice he used for important people. This one's big, Clara. Ethan Vale, tech mogul. Throws around more money in a night than you make in a year. Don't mess it up. She nodded, smiled, said all the right things. What else could she do? The Meridian was the kind of restaurant where a single plate cost more than Clara's weekly groceries. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls. The walls were covered in fabric that probably had a French name she couldn't pronounce. Men in $1,000 suits sat next to women dripping in diamonds, all of them playing a game Clara would never be invited to join. She'd been working here for 8 months. Long enough to learn how to be invisible, how to pour wine without shaking, how to smile at people who looked through her like she was furniture. Long enough to need the job too badly to quit. Her younger brother Jamie was 24 now, 6 years frozen at 18 in all the ways that mattered. The accident had left him with brain damage that required care she couldn't afford and surgeries insurance wouldn't cover. Every paycheck went to keeping him alive. Every shift was another handful of hours purchased at the cost of her pride. So when Dennis told her to take care of Mr. Vale, she took a breath and walked toward table 12. She saw him before he saw her. Ethan Vale sat at the center of a group of 5, holding court like a king among peasants. He was younger than she'd expected, 32 according to the Forbes profile she'd read in the break room on her phone while eating yesterday's pasta. Dark hair cut sharp and expensive, a face that photographers loved, all angles and intensity. The kind of man who looked like he'd been designed rather than born. He wore confidence like cologne, too much of it, choking the air around him. The others at the table leaned in when he spoke, laughed when he smiled. They were older, grayer, hungrier, the kind of people who made decisions that ruined lives before dessert. Clara approached with her notepad, her smile fixed in place like armor. "Good evening, gentlemen. Can I start you off with champagne?" Ethan said without looking up. "The Cristal. And make sure it's actually cold this time. Last place I went, they served it lukewarm like we were animals." The men around him chuckled. Clara wrote it down. "Of course, I'll bring that right. Are you new?" He glanced at her then, quick and dismissive. His eyes were green, cold, the color of money. "You look lost." "I've been here 8 months, sir." "Really?" He said it flat, like he didn't believe her, like it didn't matter either way. "Well, try not to spill anything. This suit costs more than your car." More laughter from the table. Clara's cheeks burned, but she kept smiling. "I'll be careful, sir." She turned away before he could say anything else. In the wine cellar, her hand shook as she pulled the Cristal from the cooler. She pressed her palms against the cold bottle and breathed. In for 4. Out for 4. The technique her therapist had taught her back when she could still afford therapy. She didn't recognize him. How could she? 6 years ago, she'd only seen him twice. Once at her father's office Christmas party, once at the funeral. A business partner, a pallbearer, a man in a dark suit who'd shaken her hand and said he was sorry for her loss. But that was before she knew. Before she'd found the documents in her mother's safety deposit box. Before she understood what sorry really meant. Clara carried the champagne back to table 12 on a silver tray, 5 crystal flutes arranged in a perfect circle. She poured for each man with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Ethan watched her the whole time, his gaze heavy and evaluating. "So what's the deal with this merger?" one of the men asked. He was older, 60 maybe, with white hair and a watch that could have paid for Jamie's surgery twice over. "Your lawyers really think Harrison's going to fold?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, swirling his champagne. "Harrison's bleeding money. He doesn't have a choice. Give it 2 weeks and Vale Tech absorbs his entire operation." Just like the Hayes situation, another man said. Clara's hand stuttered. A single drop of champagne hit the tablecloth. Ethan's eyes snapped to her. Problem? No, sir. Sorry. She finished pouring for the last guest and stepped back. Can I take your dinner order? But her heart was hammering now, blood rushing in her ears. Hayes. They were talking about her father. I'll have the Wagyu, Ethan said, still watching her. Rare. If it comes out medium, send it back. The others ordered. Clara wrote everything down, but the words blurred on the page. Her mind was somewhere else. 6 years ago. Her father's office. The way he'd looked the last time she saw him, exhausted, terrified, talking on the phone at 2 a.m. about shares and signatures and something wrong with the filing. The crash happened 3 days later. Head-on collision. Her father died instantly. Her mother lingered for 2 weeks before her heart gave out. Jamie survived, but the boy who'd wanted to be a journalist, who'd talked too fast and laughed too loud, was gone. What came back wore his face but barely knew his name. And Ethan Vale, her father's trusted partner, the man who'd cried at the funeral, had walked away with the company. Miss? Clara blinked. Ethan was staring at her. Your pen's leaking. She looked down. Ink pooled on her palm, blue and damning. I'll get your orders in right away. She fled to the kitchen, scrubbed her hand raw in the sink, and tried to breathe. Dennis found her there. Table 12 is asking for you, he said. Everything okay? Fine. Just fine. She wasn't fine. She was 6 years of rage wrapped in a polyester uniform, standing in a kitchen that smelled like truffle oil and privilege, about to serve dinner to the man who'd destroyed everything. But she had bills to pay. A brother to take care of. A life that didn't stop just because the past showed up at table 12. So she carried the orders out one by one. Wagyu for Ethan, sea bass for the others. She moved like a ghost, silent and efficient, while the men talked about money and power and all the people who didn't matter. You know what I love about Chicago? Ethan was saying. Nobody here remembers yesterday. You can bury anything and everyone just keeps moving. The white-haired man laughed. That why you stayed after the Hayes mess? Hayes was unfortunate, Ethan said smoothly. But business is business. Robert knew the risks. Robert, her father's name in this man's mouth. Clara's hands tightened on her tray. Still, another guest said, hard to believe he just lost control like that. Robert Hayes was always so careful. Ethan shrugged. Careful doesn't matter when you're drunk behind the wheel. The lie hit Clara like a fist. Her father hadn't been drinking. The toxicology report was clean. She'd read it 100 times, memorized every line. But somehow the newspapers had printed a different story. Somehow the official narrative became, Robert Hayes, troubled executive, drove himself and his family off the road in a moment of weakness. Nobody questioned it. Nobody cared enough to dig deeper. Except Clara. She set down the last plate with a hand that barely trembled. Will there be anything else? Wine, Ethan said. Something big. Impress me. She brought him a 2015 Bordeaux that cost $1,800 a bottle, poured it with steady hands, smiled when he didn't say thank you. The dinner dragged on. 2 hours of watching Ethan hold court, watching powerful men laugh at his jokes and agree with his opinions. He was good at this, at making people feel like they were on the winning side just by sitting near him. By the time dessert came, Clara's feet ached and her jaw hurt from smiling. She brought out chocolate soufflés arranged like small, dark towers, set them down gently, turned to leave. That's when Ethan stood up. He was talking, gesturing with his wine glass, performing for his audience. He didn't see her, didn't register that she was still there, invisible as always. His elbow caught the glass. Red wine arced through the air in slow motion. It hit his jacket, his shirt, his pants. $12,000 of Italian tailoring turned purple in an instant. The table went silent. Ethan looked down at himself, at the spreading stain, then up at Clara. I'm sorry, Clara started, but the words died in her throat, because she hadn't done anything. He'd knocked over his own glass. But nobody was looking at him. They were all looking at her. Do you have any idea what you've done? Ethan's voice was low, dangerous. Do you have any concept of how much this costs? Sir, I didn't what? Didn't mean to destroy a $12,000 suit? He stepped closer. She could smell his cologne, his rage. Didn't think before you came stumbling over here like some kind of... He stopped himself, looked around at his audience, then back at her. You're fired, he said simply. Get out. The restaurant had gone quiet. Other tables were watching now. Dennis was speed-walking over, his face pale. Mr. Vale, I'm so sorry. We'll cover the cleaning costs, of course. I don't want it cleaned, Ethan snapped. I want it replaced. And I want her gone. Clara stood there, wine dripping from the bottle she still held, and something inside her snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet break, like old glass finally giving up. I didn't spill it, she said. Ethan blinked. What? I didn't spill the wine. You knocked over your own glass. The silence deepened. Dennis made a small, wounded sound. Clara, he hissed. Don't! But she was done. Done being invisible. Done being careful. Done watching this man who'd killed her family stand here playing victim over a stained suit. You weren't paying attention, Clara continued, her voice steady now, calm. You were showing off for your friends and you hit the glass with your elbow. I saw it. Everyone saw it. Ethan's face went hard. Are you calling me a liar? I'm telling you what happened. He laughed. It was an ugly sound. You think anyone cares what you saw? You're a waitress. You're nobody. And there it was. The truth under all the politeness, under the suits and the chandeliers and the pretend civility of places like this. She was nobody, just like her father had been nobody when this man stole his company, just like her mother had been nobody when she died believing the newspapers, just like Jamie was nobody, locked in a care facility because Clara couldn't afford anything better. Nobody. Clara set down the wine bottle very carefully. When she looked up at Ethan Vale, she wasn't smiling anymore. You're right, she said quietly. I am nobody. Just like my father was nobody when you destroyed him. The words hung in the air like smoke. Ethan's expression didn't change, didn't even flicker, like he genuinely didn't know what she was talking about. What the hell are you what? Robert Hayes, Clara said, each word clear and sharp. That was my father's name, the man whose company you stole, the man you killed. Now Ethan's face changed. Something flickered behind his eyes, recognition maybe, or calculation, or just surprise that the furniture had learned to talk. I have no idea what... 6 years ago, Clara cut him off. Her voice was rising now, carrying across the silent restaurant. You were his business partner, his friend, and then suddenly he was dead and you owned everything and nobody asked questions because you're Ethan Vale, and he was just Robert Hayes, just another nobody who got in your way. Dennis grabbed her arm. Clara, that's enough. She shook him off. You stood at his funeral, she continued, staring at Ethan. You shook my hand. You said you were sorry. And the whole time you were covering up what you'd done, the shares you'd stolen, the files you'd forged, all of it. The white-haired man stood up. Now, wait just a minute. Shut up, Walter, Ethan said quietly, his eyes never leaving Clara's face. So this was Walter. Walter Bramwell. The name from her mother's documents. One of the original founders. This is insane, Ethan said, but his voice was different now. Careful. Security, I have proof, Clara said. The words came out stronger than she felt. My mother left documents, real share certificates, signatures, everything you tried to bury. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then I suggest you take it to the police. Right now you're making wild accusations in front of witnesses and... The police? Clara laughed, high and broken. The same police who wrote the report that said my father was drunk? The same police your lawyers paid to look the other way? That's a serious allegation. My father wasn't drinking. The shout tore out of her. The toxicology was clean and you know it. You know it because you're the reason he crashed. You're the reason my mother died and my brother can't remember his own name, and I've spent 6 years cleaning up after people like you just to keep him alive. Her voice cracked. She hated that. Hated showing weakness in front of him. But she couldn't stop now. You took everything, she whispered. And you turned it into this, into suits and restaurants and power. You built an empire on my family's bones and you don't even remember our names. Ethan stared at her for a long moment. The restaurant had gone completely silent. Even the kitchen noise had stopped. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out his wallet. How much? He asked. Clara blinked. What? How much to make this go away? He pulled out a stack of bills. 5,000? 10? Name your price and get out of my sight. The money sat between them like an insult. Clara looked at it. At him. At all the people watching this play out like dinner theater. Then she did something she'd never done before. She picked up Ethan's wine glass, the one he'd knocked over, now empty, and she threw the last few drops directly in his face. The room gasped. Ethan stood there, red wine dripping down his cheek, his expression frozen in shock. I don't want your money, Clara said quietly. I want the truth. Then she turned and walked away, past Dennis's horrified face, past the staring customers, past the life she'd been clinging to for 6 years. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she couldn't be nobody anymore. Not even for Jamie. Not even to survive. Behind her, she heard Ethan's voice, cold and sharp. Someone get her name. Full name. I want to know everything about her by morning. Clara kept walking. The night air hit her face like a slap, cold, real. Chicago spread out around her in all its glittering indifference, a city that didn't care who won or lost as long as the game kept playing. She stood on the sidewalk in her wine-stained uniform and laughed. Because she'd just destroyed her only source of income. Because she'd confronted a billionaire in front of witnesses. Because after 6 years of silence, she'd finally said the words out loud. Her phone buzzed, a text from Dennis. Don't come back, you're done. She deleted it. Another buzz. A number she didn't recognize. This is Walter Bramwell. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., my office. Come alone. Clara stared at the message. Walter Bramwell. Original founder. The man who'd been at the table. The man Ethan had told to shut up. She typed back, Why should I trust you? The response came immediately. Because your mother was right, and I can prove it. Clara's hands started shaking. She'd set something in motion tonight, something she couldn't control or take back. Tomorrow, everything would change. But tonight, standing on a Chicago sidewalk with nothing left to lose, Clara Hayes allowed herself one moment of satisfaction. She'd looked Ethan Vale in the eye and called him a murderer. And he hadn't denied it. Not really. That had to mean something. It had to. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat in her apartment, a studio barely bigger than a closet in a building where the heat worked half the time, and stared at Walter Bramwell's message until the words blurred. The phone felt heavy in her hands, like it was made of something denser than plastic and glass, like it held the weight of every decision she'd have to make next. At 3 a.m, she gave up on sleep and made instant coffee with water that took forever to boil. Her hands were steadier now than they'd been at the restaurant, but the adrenaline had worn off and left something worse behind. Doubt, fear, the creeping understanding that she'd just burned her life down and had no idea what came next. The coffee tasted like burnt cardboard, but she drank it anyway, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her laptop open to articles about Ethan Vale. Forbes called him a visionary. TechCrunch called him the future of artificial intelligence. Bloomberg ran a profile last year with the headline, The Boy Who Built an Empire from Ashes. Her father's ashes. She clicked through images. Ethan at charity galas. Ethan accepting awards. Ethan shaking hands with senators and tech giants and people who shaped the world, while Clara scraped by on tips and anger. In every photo, he looked untouchable. But she'd seen his face tonight when she said her father's name. That flicker of recognition, the careful recalibration of his expression. He remembered. He just hoped she'd forgotten. At 7, Clara showered in water that never got quite hot enough and dressed in the only professional clothes she owned. Black pants with a broken zipper she'd safety pinned shut, a white blouse that was more gray now, a blazer she'd bought at Goodwill 3 years ago. She looked at herself in the mirror and saw exactly what Ethan Vale saw. Nobody. But nobody had nothing left to lose. She took the red line downtown, pressed between commuters who stared at their phones like they held the secrets of the universe. The train smelled like old coffee and unwashed clothes and the particular desperation of people going to jobs they hated because the alternative was worse. Clara knew that smell intimately. Walter Bramwell's office was in the Loop, in one of those old buildings that pretended the modern world hadn't happened yet. Marble floors, brass elevators, the kind of place where money whispered instead of shouted. The directory listed him on the 14th floor. Bramwell and Associates, private equity. Clara's stomach twisted as she stepped into the elevator. This could be a trap. Ethan could have sent Walter to buy her silence or threaten her into disappearing. She had no reason to trust anyone who'd sat at that table last night. But the documents her mother left were real. And if Walter could prove them, if he could validate what Clara had spent 6 years trying to understand, then maybe... The elevator dinged. 14th floor. The reception area was smaller than she expected. Elegant but quiet. A woman in her 50s sat behind a desk, typing with the efficient precision of someone who'd done this for decades. "I'm here to see Walter Bramwell," Clara said. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. The woman looked up, smiled. "You must be Clara. He's expecting you. Go right in." That easy, like she belonged here. Clara walked through the heavy oak door into an office that smelled like old books and expensive leather. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed Chicago stretched out below, all glass and ambition. Walter Bramwell stood with his back to her, looking out at the city. He was tall, thin, in the way very old or very disciplined men get. When he turned, his face was lined with the kind of wrinkles that came from actually living life, instead of trying to Botox it away. "Miss Hayes," he said. His voice was rough, worn down by years of cigarettes or whiskey or both. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I'm not sure why I did," Clara said honestly. Walter smiled. "Smart. Never trust a man just because he says you should. Would you like coffee, tea, something stronger?" "Coffee, please." He poured from a silver carafe that probably cost more than Clara's rent, handed her a cup and saucer made of china so delicate she was afraid to hold it. "Sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair. Clara sat. The chair swallowed her. Walter took the chair opposite, studying her with eyes that missed nothing. "You look like your mother," he said finally. "Margaret." She had that same look, like she was ready to fight the whole world if it came to it. Clara's throat tightened. "You knew my mother?" "I knew both your parents. Robert and I started Hayes and Bramwell Technologies together back when we were young and stupid enough to think we could change the world." He smiled, but it was sad around the edges. "We were partners for 12 years, friends for longer." "Then why—" Clara stopped, started again. "Why did you let Ethan take everything?" Walter's expression darkened. "Because I'm a coward, and because by the time I understood what he'd done, it was too late to stop it." The honesty startled her. "Tell me what happened," Clara said. "All of it, the truth." Walter set down his coffee cup. Outside, the city hummed with traffic and commerce and all the machinery of a world that kept turning no matter who got crushed in the gears. "Ethan came to us 7 years ago," Walter began. "Brilliant kid. 25 years old with ideas that could have revolutionized AI integration. Your father saw potential, brought him in as a junior partner, 10% equity, room to grow." "I remember," Clara said. "My dad talked about him, said he was going to be important." He was right. Ethan was important. He was also dangerous. Walter pulled out a file folder thick with papers. "Your father started noticing irregularities about 8 months before the accident. Money moving through accounts it shouldn't. Share certificates being transferred without proper authorization. He confronted Ethan. And Ethan denied everything. Said Robert was stressed, seeing problems that didn't exist. He was very convincing. I believed him." Walter's jaw tightened. "I chose to believe him because it was easier than admitting we'd brought a wolf into the fold." Clara's hands clenched around the coffee cup. "What did my father do?" "He hired a forensic accountant, started building a case. He told Margaret everything, gave her copies of all the documentation in case something happened to him." Walter looked at Clara. "Your mother was always the smart one. She knew how to protect herself." "But she didn't protect him. No one could have protected him from what came next." Walter opened the folder, spread papers across his desk. 3 days before the accident, Robert discovered that Ethan had forged share transfer documents, used them to claim ownership of 45% of the company, combined with his original 10% and some shares he'd bought from smaller investors. It gave him controlling interest. Clara leaned forward, looking at the documents. Corporate filings, transfer certificates, pages dense with legal language she barely understood. "Robert was going to file charges," Walter continued. "He had an appointment with the district attorney the morning after the crash. He was going to burn it all down to stop Ethan." "So Ethan killed him?" Walter hesitated. "I can't prove that. No one can. The police report says mechanical failure. Your father's car went off the road on a curve he'd driven 1,000 times, hit a tree at 60 miles an hour. The toxicology was clean, Clara said. I read it. He wasn't drinking. No, he wasn't. Walter pulled out another document. This one was older, creased. But someone leaked a story to the press about Robert having financial troubles, about him being unstable, erratic. By the time the real toxicology report came out, the narrative was already set. Troubled executive, tragic accident. The kind of story people believe because it's easier than the alternative. Clara felt sick. And you let it happen? Yes. Walter didn't flinch from the accusation. I was scared. Ethan came to me the day after the funeral and told me if I said anything, if I questioned the official story, he'd make sure I was destroyed too. He had lawyers, connections, money to bury anyone who got in his way. I had a wife. Grandkids. I chose them over the truth. You chose yourself, Clara said quietly. Yes, Walter agreed. I did. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 6 years of cowardice and grief. Why now? Clara asked finally. Why tell me this now? Walter stood, walked back to the window. When he spoke, his voice was tired. Because I'm 74 years old and I'm dying, pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less. Clara didn't know what to say to that. I thought I could live with what I'd done, Walter continued. I thought I could take it to my grave and it wouldn't matter. But then I saw you last night, saw you stand up to him when I never could. And I realized, he turned to face her. I realized I don't want to die a coward. Clara set down her coffee cup before she dropped it. Her hands were shaking again. The documents your mother left you, Walter said. Do you have them? Yes, in a safety deposit box. Bring them to me. Let me see what we're working with. We? Claire's voice cracked on the word. You think you can fix this? After 6 years? After he's... She gestured at the city below them, at the world Ethan had built. After he's become untouchable? No one's untouchable, Walter said. They just want you to think they are. Clara stood. The room felt too small suddenly, too full of possibilities she didn't know how to hold. If I do this, she said, if I bring you the documents and we try to prove what he did, he'll come after me. He'll destroy me. Yes, Walter agreed. He will. I have a brother, Jamie. He's in a care facility. He needs me. I know. If I lose my income, if Ethan ruins me, Jamie suffers. Walter nodded. That's the cost. That's always the cost. The powerful stay powerful because people like us have too much to lose. Clara thought about Jamie, about the boy he'd been before the accident, sharp and curious, and so alive it hurt to remember. She thought about the empty shell he'd become, the way he sometimes looked at her like she was a stranger, the way he'd forgotten how to laugh. She thought about her father, who'd tried to do the right thing and died for it. Her mother, who'd protected the truth and carried it to her grave. 6 years of silence, 6 years of being nobody. I'll bring you the documents, Claire said. Tomorrow. Walter's expression shifted. Relief, maybe, or just exhaustion. There's something else you should know, he said. Ethan's not going to let last night go. He's already making calls. I've heard from 3 people this morning asking about you, about your father, about what really happened. What did you tell them? Nothing, yet. Walter moved to his desk, wrote something on a business card, handed it to her. But you need to be careful. Ethan doesn't just destroy people. He erases them, makes them disappear from the story entirely. Clara looked at the card. A name and number she didn't recognize. Who's this? A lawyer. Someone who's not afraid of Ethan Vale. If you're serious about this, you'll need representation. Clara tucked the card in her pocket. It felt like accepting a weapon she didn't know how to use. One more thing, Walter said as she turned to leave. Why did you do it? Last night, you could have kept quiet, kept your job, stayed invisible. Why speak up? Clara thought about it, about the moment the wine spilled and Ethan's face twisted with contempt, and she'd felt something inside her finally break. Because I was tired, she said simply. Tired of being scared. Tired of pretending it didn't matter. Tired of watching him win. Walter nodded like he understood. Your father would have been proud. The words hit harder than Clara expected. She left before the tears could start. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. By the time Clara stepped back onto the street, the morning had turned gray and cold. Rain threatened in the heavy clouds pressing down on the city. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "We need to talk today. Name the place." No signature. But Clara knew who it was. Ethan. She typed back before she could overthink it. "Grant Park. Noon. Come alone." The response came immediately. "Done." Clara stood on the sidewalk and wondered what she'd just set in motion. Meeting Ethan alone was stupid, dangerous, the kind of thing people did in movies right before everything went wrong. But she needed to look him in the eye again. Needed to see if he'd admit what he'd done when there were no witnesses to perform for. She had 3 hours to prepare. 3 hours to figure out what she'd say to the man who'd killed her family. She spent them at the public library, printing every article she could find about her father's death, reading accident reports and police statements and the carefully constructed lie that had become official history. By the time she headed to Grant Park, her messenger bag was heavy with paper and proof that felt simultaneously substantial and completely worthless. The park was mostly empty, too cold for tourists, too early for the lunch crowd. Clara found a bench near Buckingham Fountain and waited. Ethan arrived at exactly noon. He wore different clothes, dark jeans, a black coat that probably cost more than Clara's entire wardrobe. No tie, no performance. Just a man walking toward a bench like they were old friends meeting for coffee. He sat down without asking, keeping a careful distance between them. For a long moment, neither spoke. "You wanted to talk," Ethan said finally. His voice was different than it had been at the restaurant. Quieter, almost conversational. "So talk." Clara watched a mother push a stroller past them, oblivious to everything except her child. "Did you kill my father?" she asked. Ethan didn't flinch. "No." "Did you have him killed?" "No." "Did you steal his company?" "I bought his shares, legally, through proper channels." "With forged documents." "According to who? A dying old man and a waitress with a grudge?" Ethan turned to look at her. His eyes were the same cold green as last night, but there was something else there now. Calculation. "You made quite a scene last night." "You deserved it." "Maybe." He leaned back, studying her. "But now you've put yourself in an interesting position. You've made accusations you can't prove against a man with very expensive lawyers and a lot of friends in the city." "I can prove it," Clara said. "I have the documents." "Documents can be fabricated." "Not these ones." Ethan's expression didn't change, but something shifted in the air between them, a sharpening of attention. "What do you want, Clara Cease?" he asked. "Money? A job? A public apology? Name your price." "I want you to admit what you did." "I didn't do anything." "You stole—" "I built a company," Ethan interrupted. His voice hardened. "I took failing technology and turned it into something revolutionary. I created jobs, wealth, innovation. Your father was brilliant, but he didn't have vision. He would have run Hayes and Bramwell into the ground within 5 years. So you decided to take it from him." "I decided to save it." Ethan stood, paced a few steps away, then back. "You want to talk about theft? Let's talk about your father sitting on patents worth billions because he was too scared to take risks. Let's talk about him holding the company hostage to his outdated ethics while the world moved on without us. He was your partner. He was an obstacle." The words came out flat and cold. "And yes, I removed that obstacle. Not with murder or sabotage or whatever dramatic story you've convinced yourself is true. I removed it with lawyers and paperwork and perfectly legal maneuvering that your father was too naive to see coming." Clara felt like she'd been slapped. "You're admitting it. I'm admitting I'm better at business than Robert Hayes was. The rest is your interpretation." Ethan sat back down, closer this time. "Here's what's going to happen, Clara. You're going to take those documents to Walter, or a lawyer, or the press, or wherever you think they'll matter, and nothing will happen. Because I've spent 6 years making sure every loose end is tied up. Every witness is bought or silenced. Every paper trail leads nowhere. Walter will testify. Walter's dying. His testimony is worthless. A bitter old man trying to rewrite history before he goes." Ethan's voice was almost gentle now, patronizing. "You're smart. I can see that. You're also broke, alone, and responsible for a brother who requires constant care. Walk away. Take the money I'm offering. It's enough to set you up for life. Enough for Jamie's surgery and whatever else he needs. Claire's blood went cold. How do you know about Jamie's surgery? Ethan smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. I know everything about you. I've known since you walked into the Meridian 8 months ago and applied for a job. I know where you live. I know how much debt you're in. I know you visit your brother every Sunday and cry in the parking lot afterward because you can't afford to make him better. You've been watching me. I've been protecting my interests. He pulled an envelope from his coat pocket, set it on the bench between them. $5 million, tax-free, wired to any account you want. All you have to do is sign an NDA and disappear. Clara stared at the envelope. $5 million. Enough to save Jamie. Enough to never be scared again. Enough to betray everything her parents had died for. No, she said. Ethan's smile faded. Don't be stupid. I'm done being smart. Clara stood, leaving the envelope where it lay. I'm done calculating the cost and choosing survival over truth. You killed my father, maybe not with your hands, but with your greed, and you don't get to buy your way out of it. I'm giving you a chance. I don't want your chances. The shout echoed across the empty park. I want justice. I want everyone to know what you are. Ethan stood slowly. The gentleness was gone from his voice now. Then you're going to lose. I will bury you so deep no one will remember your name. I will make sure Jamie loses his care facility placement. I will destroy every single piece of the tiny life you've built, and when I'm done, you'll have nothing, not even your pride. Clara met his eyes and didn't look away. Then I'll have nothing, but at least I won't be you. She walked away before he could respond. Her legs felt shaky, but she kept moving, past the fountain, past the empty benches, past the life she could have had if she'd just taken the money and stayed quiet. Behind her, she heard Ethan call out, "You're making a mistake!" She didn't turn around. By the time Clara got home, it had started to rain. She sat in her apartment with the lights off and let herself shake. Let herself be scared. Let herself understand exactly what she'd just chosen. War with a man who had everything. Her phone buzzed, a text from Walter. I heard about the meeting. Are you okay? Clara typed back. He offered me $5 million to disappear. What did you say? No. A long pause. Then, your father would be proud. Bring the documents tomorrow. We'll start building the case. Clara set down her phone and pulled out the safety deposit box key she wore on a chain around her neck. Her mother's last gift. The thing she'd protected for 6 years without fully understanding why. Now she understood. This wasn't about money or revenge or even justice. It was about refusing to be erased. About insisting that her father's life mattered. That her family's destruction wasn't just acceptable collateral damage in Ethan Vale's rise to power. About being someone instead of nobody, even if it cost everything. The rain picked up, drumming against her window like applause or warning. Clara closed her eyes and tried to imagine her father's face. Tried to remember what his voice sounded like when he talked about changing the world. She couldn't quite reach it. The memory was too old, too worn down by grief and time. But she remembered his last words to her, spoken 2 days before he died. They'd been fighting about something stupid, curfew maybe, or grades, or one of the 1,000 tiny battles parents and teenage daughters wage. Claire had said something cruel, the way teenagers do when they think they have forever to apologize. Her father had looked at her with tired eyes and said, "Someday you'll understand that doing the right thing usually means doing the hard thing, and you'll have to choose who you want to be." Clara had rolled her eyes, slammed her bedroom door. Never got the chance to say sorry. Now, sitting in the dark with rain falling and a war ahead of her she couldn't win, Clara finally understood. This was her choice. This was who she wanted to be. She picked up her phone and called the lawyer whose number Walter had given her. Got voicemail, left a message. "My name is Clara Hayes. Walter Bramwell gave me your number. I need help taking down Ethan Vale. Call me back." She hung up and waited. Outside, Chicago kept moving, kept living, kept grinding up dreamers and spitting out survivors. Clara Hayes had been a survivor for 6 years. Now it was time to fight. The lawyer called back at 6 in the morning. Clara had fallen asleep on her couch, still wearing yesterday's clothes, her phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline. When it rang, she jerked awake with her heart pounding and the gray dawn light making everything look washed out and unreal. Miss Hayes? The voice was female, sharp, efficient. "This is Diane Rothman. Walter Bramwell asked me to take your call." Clara sat up, rubbed her face. "Thanks for calling back." "I don't do thanks. I do work." Papers rustled in the background. "Walter says you have documentation proving Ethan Vale committed fraud 6 years ago. Is that accurate?" "Yes." "And you're prepared to go up against someone with Vale's resources?" Clara thought about the envelope on the bench, $5 million she'd walked away from. "Yes." "Good, because this is going to get ugly. Vale doesn't lose. He buries people who try to make him lose." A pause. "I assume you understand that." "He already threatened me." "Then you understand." More rustling. "I need to see everything you have. Documents, timelines, witness statements, anything that supports your claim. Can you get to my office by 9? Clara checked the time. 2.5 hours. "Yes. Don't bring the originals. Make copies. Hide the originals somewhere Vale can't get to them." Diane's voice softened slightly. "And Miss Hayes? Watch your back. If Vale threatened you yesterday, he'll do more than threaten today." The call ended. Clara sat in her apartment as the city woke up around her and tried to figure out where to hide documents from a billionaire. A safety deposit box wasn't safe enough. Banks could be subpoenaed, coerced. Her apartment was definitely out. She couldn't trust friends because she didn't really have any, not after 6 years of working double shifts and spending every spare moment at Jamie's facility. Jamie. Claire grabbed her keys and left before she could second-guess herself. The care facility was a 40-minute train ride, way out in the suburbs where rent was cheaper and the buildings all looked the same. Sunshine Gardens, a name that promised more than it delivered. The place was clean enough, the staff overworked but trying, but it still smelled like industrial cleaner and the particular sadness of people waiting to die or get better and not sure which would come first. Clara signed in at the front desk. The morning nurse, Rita, gave her a tired smile. "Early visit today." "Couldn't sleep," Clara said. "He's in the common room. Had a good night." Good night meant Jamie hadn't screamed or tried to hurt himself or forgotten how to swallow. The bar was low and getting lower. Clara found him sitting by a window, staring out at nothing. He was 24 but looked older now, the accident having aged him in ways that had nothing to do with time. His hair needed cutting. His clothes, sweats and a t-shirt, hung loose on a frame that had been athletic once. "Hey, Jamie," Clara said softly. He turned, looked at her. For a second there was nothing in his eyes, just blank confusion. Then something clicked. "Clara," he said. The word came out slow, like he had to pull it from somewhere deep. "You're here." "Yeah, I'm here." She sat next to him, took his hand. It was warm and real, and it killed her that sometimes he didn't know who she was. "I need to ask you something." Jamie blinked. "Okay." "Remember Mom's box, the one she gave you before?" Clara stopped, started again. "The metal box with the lock." Jamie's face scrunched up with the effort of remembering. "The box. You kept it in your room, under the bed. Do you remember where it is now?" "Storage," Jamie said after a long moment. "Rita helped me, said it was safe." Relief flooded through Clara. "Can you tell Rita I can access it, that it's okay?" Jamie nodded slowly, then his hand tightened on hers. "You're in trouble." The clarity surprised her. "What makes you say that?" "You get this look. Same look Dad had. Before." His eyes focused on her with sudden sharpness. "Be careful, Clara. The world's not fair." Tears burned Clara's throat, but she swallowed them down. "I know. I'll be careful." "Promise." "I promise." The moment passed. Jamie's attention drifted back to the window, back to wherever he went when the world got too confusing. But he'd given her what she needed. Rita helped Clara access the storage unit in the facility's basement. Boxes and furniture and the accumulated debris of lives interrupted. Jamie's stuff was in the corner, labeled in Rita's neat handwriting. Clara found the metal box exactly where her mother had left it 6 years ago. Inside were the documents that would either save her or destroy her. Share certificates with her mother's signature. Transfer papers showing the original ownership structure of Hayes and Bramwell Technologies. Letters between her father and his lawyer outlining the fraud he'd uncovered. Email printouts, bank statements. Everything her mother had gathered in those last terrible weeks before the accident everything she'd protected because she knew what was coming. Clara made copies at a FedEx down the street, spent money she didn't have on a fireproof safe that she left with Rita, along with instructions that only Clara could access it. Then she took the copies and headed downtown to meet a lawyer she'd never met to start a war she couldn't win. Diane Rothman's office was in a mid-rise in the West Loop, the kind of building that was nice enough to be respectable but not fancy enough to scare away regular people. The waiting room had magazines from 3 months ago and a receptionist who looked at Clara like she could see exactly how much money wasn't in her bank account. "Diane will see you now," the receptionist said without looking up from her computer. Diane's office was small, crowded with file boxes and law books, and the organized chaos of someone who actually worked instead of just looking important. She was probably 50, with steel gray hair cut short and eyes that didn't miss anything. "Sit," Diane said, gesturing to a chair piled with folders. "Move that stuff anywhere." Clara sat, put her messenger bag on her lap like a shield. Diane got right to it. "Show me what you have." Clara spread the documents across the desk. Diane put on reading glasses and went through them with the focused intensity of a surgeon examining an X-ray. She didn't speak for 10 minutes, just read, made notes, occasionally grunted. Finally, she sat back. "This is good," she said. "Really good. Your mother was thorough." But it's 6 years old. Ethan Vale has had 6 years to cover his tracks, create counter-documentation, build a narrative that makes this look like the bitter grievance of a dead woman who didn't understand business. Diane tapped one of the share certificates. "This shows your mother owned 48% of the company, but Vale will argue she sold those shares before she died, that the transfer was legal and proper. She didn't sell anything. Can you prove that?" Clara's stomach sank. "The shares weren't in her estate. I checked. Everything was gone by the time probate closed. Because Vale took them." Diane pulled out a legal pad, started writing. "Here's what we're up against. Vale's lawyers are the best money can buy. They'll claim your father was planning to sell, that the transfer paperwork was already in motion when he died. They'll say your mother was emotionally compromised, not thinking clearly. They'll drag your family through the mud and make you look like an opportunist trying to cash in on tragedy. So we can't win." "I didn't say that." Diane looked up. "I said it's going to be hard. There's a difference. We need more than documents. We need testimony. We need someone who was there, who saw what Vale did, who's willing to say it under oath. Walter's dying. His testimony is suspect. We need someone else." Diane studied Clara. "What about other employees? People who worked at Hayes and Bramwell back then?" Clara tried to remember. "There was Dad's assistant, Carol something, and the CFO, Michael Brennan. Dad trusted him. Find them, talk to them, see if they remember anything that supports your version of events." Diane pulled out a business card, slid it across the desk. "This is an investigator I work with. Her name's Lynn. She's expensive, but she's good. She can help track down witnesses, build a timeline, find things Vale thought he buried." Clara looked at the card. The price of justice kept climbing higher than she could reach. "I don't have money for an investigator." "I know. That's why I'm working pro bono." Diane leaned forward. "Walter explained your situation. I don't usually do this, but I've spent 20 years watching men like Ethan Vale get away with things because their victims can't afford to fight back. I'm tired of it." "Why?" Diane smiled thinly. "Because someone like Vale destroyed my sister's life 15 years ago, and I wasn't a lawyer yet. Couldn't help her. She killed herself 6 months after he was done with her." The smile faded. "So yeah, I'll take this case. I'll fight like hell. But you need to understand, this will take months, maybe years. It will consume your life. Vale will come after you with everything he has, and there's a very real chance we'll lose anyway." Clara thought about Jamie's face when he told her to be careful, about her mother hiding documents in a metal box like she knew what was coming, about her father who'd tried to do the right thing and died for it. "I understand," Clara said. "Good." Diane stood. "Then let's get to work. First thing, we file a civil suit. Fraud, theft of assets, wrongful death. We put it on record that you're coming for him. It'll force his hand, make him respond publicly." "Won't that just warn him? Give him time to prepare?" "He's already preparing. From the second you confronted him at that restaurant, he's been building his defense." Diane walked to her window, looked out at the city. The question is whether he thinks you're serious or just noise he can ignore. Filing suit tells him you're serious. It also creates a public record. Media attention, pressure. Clara felt sick. I don't want media attention. Too bad. You're about to get it. Diane turned back. When we file this suit, every newspaper and blog in Chicago will pick it up. Billionaire accused of fraud. Dead partner's daughter seeking justice. It's a good story. A righteous story. We use that. He'll destroy me. Probably, but he'll have to do it in public now. And that's harder than doing it in the dark. Diane sat back down, started pulling papers from a drawer. I need you to write everything down. A complete statement, every conversation you remember with your father about the company, everything your mother said, every detail about the accident, every interaction you've had with Vale. All of it. Clara spent the next 3 hours writing. Her hand cramped and her memories blurred together, but she kept going, pouring 6 years of grief and rage onto lined paper until the words stopped making sense. When she finally finished, Diane read through it, made notes, asked questions that made Claire remember things she'd tried to forget. This is good, Diane said finally. We'll clean it up, turn it into an affidavit. You'll need to swear to it under oath. When do we file? Tomorrow. Diane smiled, and this time it had teeth. No point waiting. Give me tonight to draft the complaint. Tomorrow morning, we hit Vale with everything we've got. Clara left the office feeling like she'd just jumped off a cliff. The fall hadn't killed her yet, but the ground was coming up fast. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop now, and I'll let you walk away. Keep going, and I'll make sure your brother loses his care placement by end of week. No signature. It didn't need one. Clara typed back. Try it. I'll add witness intimidation to the lawsuit. She sent it before she could chicken out. The response came immediately. Your funeral. Clara shoved her phone in her pocket and kept walking. She had 24 hours before the lawsuit became public, 24 hours before Ethan Vale's machine started grinding her into dust. She spent them tracking down her father's old employees. Carol Winters, her father's assistant, had moved to Portland. Clara found her on Facebook, sent a message explaining who she was and what she was trying to do. Got no response. Michael Brennan, the CFO, was harder to locate. His LinkedIn said he'd retired 3 years ago. No current employer. No contact information. Clara called Walter. I'm trying to find Michael Brennan, she said. Dad's old CFO. You know where he is? Walter was quiet for a moment. Michael's in a nursing home, stroke. He can't talk anymore, Clara. Another dead end. Another witness silenced by time or chance or something worse. What about other employees? Anyone who might remember what happened? Most of them went to work for Vale after the acquisition. He bought their silence with good salaries and benefits. Walter sighed. The ones who didn't take his money left the industry entirely, too scared to stay. There has to be someone. There's me. That's all you've got. Clara hung up and stared at her apartment walls. One dying witness, documents that could be explained away. A lawyer working pro bono because she had her own demons to fight. It wasn't enough. She knew it wasn't enough. But it was all she had. That night, Clara visited Jamie again, sat with him through dinner, and helped him remember how to use a fork when he forgot. The facility was understaffed as always. Budget cuts. Not enough nurses for too many patients. If I lose my job, Clara said quietly, more to herself than Jamie, I can't pay for this place anymore. Jamie looked at her. One of his clear moments. Then don't lose. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. He took her hand. You fight or you quit. That's always the choice. What if fighting makes everything worse? Worse than what? Than this? He gestured around the common room where old people and broken people sat in front of a TV nobody was watching. You think I don't know this place is killing me? You think I don't see how you look at me like I'm already gone? Clara's throat closed up. I'm not gone, Jamie said. His voice was stronger now, clearer than she'd heard it in months. I'm still here, and I don't want you to give up your life keeping me alive. I want you to fight, like Dad would have fought. Dad died fighting. Yeah, but he died trying to do the right thing. That matters, Clara. That has to matter. The clarity faded as quickly as it had come. Jamie's eyes went distant again, his hand slack in hers. But the words stayed. Clara left the facility and took the train back to the city through the dark. Chicago glittered around her, all lights and money and people who thought they were invincible. Tomorrow, she'd start proving them wrong. The lawsuit was filed at 9 the next morning. By 10, Clara's phone was ringing non-stop. Reporters, bloggers, people who'd found her number and wanted a statement, a quote, an interview. She ignored all of them except one, Marcus Chen from the Chicago Tribune. He called at 11 with a voice that sounded tired but genuine. "Miss Hayes, I'm doing a piece on the lawsuit. I'd like to hear your side of the story." "Why?" "Because I covered your father's accident 6 years ago, and I always thought there was more to it than the official report said." Papers shuffled. "I'd like a chance to get it right this time." Clara met him at a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. He was younger than she expected, maybe 30, with glasses and the rumpled look of someone who spent too much time chasing stories. "Tell me everything," Marcus said, pulling out a recorder. "Start from the beginning." So Clara told him about her father and Ethan's betrayal, about the forged documents and the crash that wasn't an accident, about 6 years of silence and a brother who couldn't remember who he was. Marcus listened without interrupting. When she finished, he sat back and let out a long breath. "This is big," he said. "Bigger than I thought. If even half of this is true, it's all true. Then Ethan Vale is in serious trouble." Marcus looked at his notes. "But he's going to fight back hard. You ready for that?" "No," Clara admitted, "but I'm doing it anyway." The article ran the next day. Front page. Billionaire accused of fraud in partner's death. It was fair, balanced, presented both sides. But it was also damning in its questions. Why had the police investigation closed so quickly? Why had the toxicology results been buried? Why had no one asked how Ethan Vale went from junior partner to sole owner overnight? The story went viral by noon. By 2, Ethan's lawyers issued a statement. "These baseless accusations are a transparent attempt at extortion by a disgruntled individual seeking to profit from a tragedy. Mr. Vale categorically denies all allegations and will vigorously defend himself against this frivolous lawsuit." By 5, Clara's apartment building was surrounded by reporters. She stayed inside with the lights off and watched through her window as cameras set up on the sidewalk. Her neighbors glared at the disruption. The landlord called and told her she was violating her lease by causing a disturbance. This was what Ethan had warned her about: the destruction. The grinding machine of his power turning everything she had into rubble. But Clara's phone also buzzed with messages of support. People who'd been destroyed by men like Ethan. People who saw themselves in her story. A GoFundMe appeared, set up by someone she'd never met, raising money for Jamie's care. By midnight, it had raised $30,000. Clara sat on her couch and cried. Not from fear or sadness, but from the overwhelming understanding that she wasn't alone anymore. That telling the truth had turned her from nobody into somebody people wanted to help. The next day, Walter called. "Turn on the news," he said. Clara found a live stream on her phone, a press conference. Ethan Vale standing behind a podium, looking somber and wounded. "I want to address the serious allegations made against me," Ethan said. His voice was measured, calm, the voice of a man who'd practiced this. 6 years ago, I lost my mentor and friend Robert Hayes in a tragic accident. I have spent every day since then honoring his legacy by growing the company we built together. Clara's hands clenched around her phone. "The suggestion that I somehow caused his death or stole from his family is not only false, it's deeply hurtful," Ethan continued. "I understand that grief can make people look for answers in the wrong places. I understand that Ms. Hayes is struggling, and I want her to know that I bear her no ill will." "Liar," Clara whispered. "In fact," Ethan said, "I'd like to extend an offer. Ms. Hayes' brother requires expensive medical care. I'm prepared to establish a trust fund in Robert Hayes' name that will cover all of Jamie Hayes' medical expenses for the rest of his life. No strings attached, just one family member trying to help another." The reporters erupted with questions. Ethan raised his hand. "I'm also calling on Ms. Hayes to drop this lawsuit and seek the help she clearly needs. Because this vendetta isn't about justice. It's about a woman in pain lashing out at the nearest target." The press conference ended. Clara's phone exploded. Text messages, calls, people asking if she'd take the money. People calling her an idiot for refusing. People saying Ethan was a saint. The narrative was shifting. Ethan had just turned himself into the victim and Clara into the crazy woman attacking a generous man trying to help. "Don't respond," Diane said when Clara called her, panicking. "This is what he does. He controls the story. We stick to the lawsuit. We let the evidence speak." "What evidence? Nobody believes me." "Some people do. The ones who matter will." Diane's voice was firm. "Trust the process, Clara. We're just getting started." But that night, Clara got an email from the care facility. A polite, professional notice that due to budgetary constraints and facility restructuring, Jamie's placement was being terminated in 30 days. She called the director, got voicemail, called again. Same thing. She knew what had happened. Ethan had made a call, pulled strings. Money talked, and facilities that relied on donors and grants listened. Clara sat in her dark apartment and felt the walls closing in. No job. No income. Her brother about to lose the only care he had, and a lawsuit that was turning her into a pariah. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe she should have taken the money and disappeared. Her phone rang. Walter. "I saw the press conference," he said. "I'm sorry, Clara. He's destroying me, just like he said he would." "I know. And it's going to get worse before it gets better." Walter paused. "There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have said from the beginning." Clara's chest tightened. "What?" "The shares your mother owned, the ones Vale stole, they weren't just valuable 6 years ago." Walter's voice was strained. "They're worth billions now. Because of those shares, Vale controls Valetech absolutely. But if we can prove they were stolen, if we can show your mother never legally transferred them, then what? Then they belong to her estate. Which means they belong to you and Jamie. You wouldn't just get damages, Clara. You'd get the company. All of it." The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. That's not possible." "It's exactly possible. It's why Vale is fighting so hard. Why he's offering money and making threats. Because if you win, he loses everything." Walter's voice hardened. "And that's why we can't give up. Not now, because you're not just fighting for justice anymore. You're fighting for the whole damn empire he built on your father's grave." Clara hung up and stared at nothing. Billions of dollars. Control of a tech company. Everything Ethan had taken, returned. It was impossible. Insane. The kind of thing that didn't happen to waitresses who lived in studio apartments and cried in parking lots. But it was also why her mother had saved those documents. Why her father had died trying to stop Ethan. Why this mattered more than money or revenge. Clara pulled out her phone and called Diane. "We need to hold a press conference," she said. "Tomorrow. I'm telling my side of the story. All of it." "Are you sure?" "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I'm sure." Because Clara Hayes was done being nobody. Done being invisible. Done letting Ethan Vale control the narrative. Tomorrow, she'd stand in front of cameras and tell the truth. And then she'd see who was really listening. The press conference was scheduled for 10 in the morning at a community center in Pilsen. Diane had chosen the location deliberately, not some fancy hotel ballroom, but a neighborhood space where regular people held quinceañeras and wedding receptions. A place that said Clara Hayes wasn't trying to play by Ethan Vale's rules. Clara barely slept the night before. She kept rehearsing what she'd say, but every version sounded either too angry or too weak. Too much like someone begging for sympathy, or too much like someone picking a fight they couldn't win. At 7, she gave up and got in the shower. The water pressure was terrible as always, barely more than a drizzle, but she stood under it until it ran cold. When she looked in the mirror after, she saw her mother's face staring back. Same sharp cheekbones, same stubborn jaw, same look that said she was about to do something that would probably blow up in her face. "Don't screw this up," she told her reflection. Her reflection didn't answer, which was probably for the best. Diane picked her up at 8:30 in a silver Honda that had seen better days. The lawyer looked tired, her eyes shadowed, but she was wearing a suit that meant business. "You ready?" Diane asked. "No." "Good. Being ready makes you cocky. Scared keeps you sharp." Diane pulled into traffic. "Remember what we talked about. Keep it simple. Keep it human. Don't get defensive when they ask about Ethan's offer. Just tell the truth." "The truth is I'm terrified, and I have no idea what I'm doing." "Then tell them that." Diane glanced at her. "People trust fear more than confidence. Confidence looks rehearsed. Fear looks real." They drove through Chicago's morning chaos, past people heading to jobs they hated and lives they'd chosen or settled for. Clara watched them and wondered how many were one bad day away from losing everything. How many had secrets they were too scared to tell. The community center was already packed when they arrived. News vans lined the street. Cameras set up inside facing a small podium someone had dragged to the front of the room. Reporters filled the folding chairs, chattering and checking their phones. Walter was there, sitting in the front row looking frailer than Clara had ever seen him. He gave her a small nod. 2 minutes, Diane said, checking her watch. You good? Clara's hands were shaking, but she nodded anyway. They walked to the front together. The room quieted. Cameras turned on, red lights blinking like predatory eyes. Clara stepped up to the podium. The microphone screeched with feedback. Someone adjusted it, and the noise stopped, but the silence that followed felt worse. She looked out at all those faces, strangers who'd come to watch her either vindicate herself or fall apart. She thought about running, just turning around and walking out and going back to being nobody. But Jamie's voice echoed in her head. You fight or you quit. That's always the choice. Clara cleared her throat. My name is Clara Hayes, she said. Her voice came out steadier than she expected. 6 years ago, my father died in what the police called an accident. My mother died 2 weeks later. My brother Jamie survived, but he's not. He's not the same. He'll never be the same. She paused. Someone's camera clicked. For 6 years, I believed what everyone told me, that my father made a mistake, that he was drinking, that it was just a tragedy, just bad luck, just one of those things that happens. Clara's hands gripped the edges of the podium. But it wasn't an accident, and my father wasn't drinking, and the man who destroyed my family is standing in front of cameras right now pretending to be the victim. The reporters leaned forward. This was what they'd come for. Ethan Vale was my father's business partner, his friend, someone my family trusted. Clara pulled out the copies of the documents Diane had prepared. And while my father was trying to expose the fraud Ethan had committed, while he was gathering evidence to take to the district attorney, his car went off the road. Perfect timing. Perfect tragedy. A reporter in the third row raised her hand. Are you saying Ethan Vale killed your father? I'm saying my father died 3 days before he was supposed to file charges. I'm saying the police investigation closed in a week. I'm saying Ethan Vale walked away with a company worth billions, and my family walked away with nothing. Do you have proof? Clara held up the documents. I have share certificates signed by my mother, transfer papers showing she owned 48% of Hayes and Bramwell Technologies. I have emails between my father and his lawyer detailing the fraud he discovered. I have a paper trail that shows Ethan Vale stole everything. Another reporter stood. Mr. Vale says these accusations are motivated by financial desperation. He says you're trying to extort him. He offered me $5 million to go away, Clara said flatly. I said no. The room erupted. Questions shouted from every direction, cameras flashing. The noise crashed over Clara like a wave. Diane stepped forward. One at a time, please. A man in the front row spoke up. Why should we believe documents from 6 years ago? How do we know they're legitimate? Because my mother knew what was coming, Clara said. She knew Ethan would try to erase what he'd done. So she saved everything. She hid it. She protected it. And she left it for me because she knew someday someone would have to tell the truth. But your mother's dead, someone called out. There's no way to verify. Walter Bramwell can verify it, Clara said. Every head turned toward Walter. He stood slowly, looking older than his 74 years, but steady. It's all true, Walter said. His voice carried across the room. I was there. I was one of the founders of Hayes and Bramwell Technologies. I watched Ethan Vale forge documents and steal shares. I watched him build an empire on Robert Hayes' grave, and I said nothing because I was a coward. The room went dead silent. I chose my comfort over justice, Walter continued. I chose to believe Ethan's lies because the truth was too expensive. But I'm dying now. Cancer. 6 months if I'm lucky. And I'll be damned if I die without telling the truth. A reporter jumped up. Are you willing to testify under oath? I already have, Walter said. He pulled papers from his jacket. This is a sworn affidavit detailing everything I witnessed, everything Ethan Vale did. It's filed with the court as of this morning. The room exploded again, cameras swinging toward Walter, reporters shouting over each other. Clara felt dizzy. Walter hadn't told her he was filing an affidavit. Hadn't warned her he was going to do this publicly. Diane leaned close. Did you know about this? No. Well, it changes everything. Diane looked almost pleased. Walter's testimony gives you credibility, makes this harder to dismiss as a grievance. A reporter managed to make herself heard over the chaos. Miss Hayes, Ethan Vale offered to pay for your brother's medical care. Why would you refuse that if you truly care about your brother? Clara had known this question was coming, had practiced answering it, but standing there under the lights with everyone watching, the practiced words felt hollow. Because it was blood money, she said simply. Because taking it would mean agreeing that my father's life didn't matter, that what happened to my family was just business, just the cost of doing business with men like Ethan Vale. Her voice cracked. My brother deserves better than charity from the man who destroyed him. He deserves justice. But he also deserves medical care, the reporter pressed. And you just lost your job. How are you going to— I don't know, Clara interrupted. I don't have answers. I don't have money or power or any idea what happens next. All I have is the truth. And maybe that's not enough. Maybe Ethan Vale wins anyway because that's how the world works. But at least I can look my brother in the eye and tell him I tried. She stepped back from the microphone. Diane moved in, started fielding questions about the lawsuit, about timelines, about legal strategy. Clara stood to the side and watched it all happen like she was underwater. Walter appeared next to her. You did good, kid. You should have told me about the affidavit. You would have tried to talk me out of it. Walter smiled. Told me I didn't have to put myself at risk. But I'm already dead. Cancer's got me. Might as well use the time I have left to do something that matters. Ethan's going to come after you. Let him try. What's he going to do, give me cancer twice? Walter patted her shoulder. Besides, this isn't about me anymore. It's about you. About whether one person telling the truth can make a difference. The press conference wrapped up 20 minutes later. Diane herded Clara out a side door to avoid the reporters who wanted follow-up interviews. That went better than expected, Diane said as they drove away. Walter's testimony is huge. It corroborates everything you're saying. Ethan will destroy him. Ethan will try. But Walter's smart. He knows what he's doing. Diane navigated through traffic. Now we wait. The story's out there. The documents are filed. We've done everything we can to build public pressure. And then what? Then Ethan responds. And we see if anyone with real power actually cares about justice or if they just care about protecting their own. Clara's phone had been buzzing non-stop. She finally looked at it. Messages from numbers she didn't recognize, some supportive, some threatening. One that just said, "You're dead." She showed it to Diane. "Screenshot that and send it to me," Diane said. "We'll add harassment to the list." But Clara's hands were shaking too hard to take a screenshot. The reality of what she'd just done was setting in. She'd stood in front of cameras and accused one of the most powerful men in Chicago of murder. She'd made herself a target, put Walter at risk, burned every bridge she had. And for what? Documents that might not hold up in court. Testimony from a dying man who'd already admitted he was a coward. A lawsuit that could take years to resolve and probably wouldn't change anything. "I need to see Jamie," Clara said. Diane dropped her at the care facility. The director met her at the door, her face apologetic but firm. "Miss Hayes, about the notice we sent." "I know, 30 days. Clara didn't have energy to fight about it. "I'll figure something out." "I'm sorry, I truly am. But we're a small facility and we rely on donations. When certain benefactors express concerns about— Ethan Vale called you." The director didn't deny it. "We have to think about all our residents, about our funding. I hope you understand." Clara understood perfectly. Power worked quietly. A phone call here, a donation withdrawn there, no fingerprints, just consequences. She found Jamie in his room, staring at a TV that wasn't on. "Hey," Clara said softly. He looked at her, smiled. "You were on TV. You saw that?" "Rita showed me, on her phone." Jamie's voice was slow but clear. "You looked brave." Clara sat on his bed. "I don't feel brave." Dad didn't either. I remember, before, he used to get scared. Used to pace around the kitchen at night talking on the phone. Mom would tell him it was okay to be scared. That scared meant it mattered. "Do you remember what he was scared of?" Jamie's face scrunched with concentration. A man. A young guy. He smiled too much. Dad didn't trust people who smiled too much. Ethan. Yeah, Ethan. Jamie looked at Clara. He's the bad guy, right? The one who hurt us? Yeah, he's the bad guy. Then you have to stop him. Jamie took her hand. Even if they kick me out of here, even if everything gets worse, you have to stop him. Clara's eyes burned. What if I can't? Then at least you tried. That's more than most people do. She stayed with Jamie until visiting hours ended, helping him with dinner and watching him struggle to remember how to tie his shoes. By the time she left, it was dark and starting to rain. Her phone rang as she waited for the train. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Miss Hayes? A woman's voice, nervous. My name is Carol Winters. You sent me a message on Facebook. Clara's heart jumped. You're my father's assistant. I was, yes. A long time ago. Carol paused. I saw your press conference. I've been thinking about it all day, about what happened back then. Do you remember anything? Anything that could help? I remember a lot. Too much. Carol's voice dropped. But I signed an NDA when I left the company. Ethan's lawyers made it very clear what would happen if I talked. Clara's hope deflated. So you can't testify. I didn't say that. Carol took a breath. I'm 56 years old. I have grandkids. I've spent 12 years keeping quiet about what I saw because I was scared. But watching you stand up there today? She stopped. I don't want to be scared anymore. What did you see? Everything. The forged signatures, the backdated documents. Your father coming in early, staying late, trying to figure out how Ethan was stealing from him. Carol's voice shook. The day before the accident, your father called me into his office. He showed me everything he'd found. He was going to the DA the next morning. He asked me to be ready to testify. And then he died. And then he died. And Ethan called me into his office and offered me two choices. Sign an NDA and take a severance package, or refuse and get sued into oblivion. Carol laughed bitterly. I took the money. I told myself I had kids to support, bills to pay, all the reasons people use when they choose comfort over truth. Clara understood that better than anyone. So what changed? You did. You stood up there with nothing, no money, no power, no protection, and you told the truth anyway, and I realized I've been living with this weight for 12 years, this guilt. And I'm tired of carrying it. Ethan will come after you. Let him. I'm done being scared. Carol's voice hardened. I'll testify. I'll tell them what I saw. And if his lawyers want to sue me, they can get in line. Clara leaned against the train station wall, rain soaking through her jacket, and felt something shift. Not hope exactly, more like the understanding that she wasn't as alone as she thought. Thank you, Clara whispered. Thank your father. He was a good man. He deserved better. Carol paused. We all did. The call ended. Clara stood in the rain and let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from the release of 6 years of holding everything in. 6 years of being strong because she had no choice. The train came. She rode it back to the city, watching her reflection in the dark window and thinking about her father. About the last time she'd seen him alive. The fight they'd had. The door she'd slammed. She'd never gotten to say sorry. Never gotten to tell him she understood now what he'd been trying to do. But maybe this was how she said it. By finishing what he started. By refusing to let Ethan Vale win. When Clara got home, her landlord was waiting in the lobby. You're out, he said without preamble. 30 days. I want you gone. I haven't violated my lease. You're creating a disturbance. Media attention. My other tenants are complaining. He crossed his arms. 30 days. Non-negotiable. Clara was too tired to argue. Fine. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, unlocked the door, and found it had been broken into. Drawers pulled out, couch cushions slashed, her laptop gone, papers scattered everywhere like someone had been searching for something. Clara stood in the doorway and stared at the destruction. She should call the police, should be scared, should feel violated. But all she felt was anger. Ethan had done this. Or someone working for him. Trying to find the original documents. Trying to intimidate her. Trying to prove she was just some nobody who could be pushed around. Clara pulled out her phone and took pictures. Then she called Diane. My apartment was broken into, she said calmly. They took my laptop and trashed everything. Are you okay? I'm fine. The originals are safe. Clara looked around at the mess. He's scared, isn't he, Ethan? That's why he's doing this, because he knows we might actually win. Maybe. Or maybe he's just showing you what happens to people who challenge him. Diane paused. Do you want to stop? This is your chance. You can walk away and… No. Claire's voice was steel. I'm not walking away. I'm not stopping. I don't care what he does to me. I'm finishing this. Okay then. Diane almost sounded proud. Then we keep fighting. Clara hung up and started cleaning, picking up papers, writing furniture, putting her destroyed apartment back together piece by piece. Her phone buzzed. A news alert. Vail Technologies stock plummets amid fraud allegations. She clicked through. The article said investors were spooked by the lawsuit, that questions about the company's founding were creating uncertainty, that Ethan Vail had called an emergency board meeting. Another article, Who is Clara Hayes, the waitress taking on a billionaire? And another, Walter Bramwell's deathbed confession, I should have spoken up years ago. The story was spreading, growing, becoming something bigger than just Clara versus Ethan. It was becoming a question, did power answer to anyone? Could one person's truth matter in a world designed to protect the powerful? Clara didn't know the answer, but she was going to find out. The next morning, Diane called with news. The board is calling for an independent investigation, she said. They want a forensic audit of the company's founding documents. Want to verify the share transfers. That's good, right? It's better than good. It means they're taking this seriously. Diane's voice was energized. It also means Ethan is losing control. The board wouldn't do this if they weren't worried. What happens now? Now we wait for the audit. Could take weeks. But if it confirms what we're saying, if it shows those shares were stolen, then Ethan's in real trouble. Clara spent those weeks in limbo. Her apartment was a crime scene the police half-heartedly investigated. Her landlord's eviction notice ticked down. Jamie's care facility countdown continued. But something else was happening too. The GoFundMe. Someone had started for Jamie's care crossed $200,000. Strangers from across the country sending money because they believed Clara's story, because they wanted to see someone like her win. A victims' rights organization offered her free temporary housing. A neurologist in Boston reached out, offering to evaluate Jamie pro bono. People Clara had never met were helping in ways she couldn't have imagined. And then Carol Winters flew to Chicago. She met with Diane, gave her deposition, laid out everything she remembered from 12 years ago. The forged signatures, the backdated documents, the way Ethan had systematically stolen from Robert Hayes while smiling to his face. It's damning, Diane said after Carol left. With her testimony and Walter's affidavit and your documents, we have a case, a real case. But we still have to prove it in court. Yes, but we're not alone anymore. Diane showed Clara her phone, messages from other former Hayes and Bramwell employees, people who'd stayed quiet for years but were ready to talk now. Ethan's wall of silence is cracking. 2 weeks after the press conference, the audit results came back. Diane called Clara at 6 in the morning. They found it, she said. Her voice was shaking. The auditors found evidence of forged signatures on the share transfer documents, found irregularities in the filing dates, found everything. Clara sat up in bed. What does that mean? It means the share transfers weren't legal. It means your mother's ownership was never properly transferred. It means… Diane took a breath. It means you and Jamie own 48% of Vail Technologies. You're the majority shareholders. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. That's impossible. It's not impossible. It's real. Diane was laughing now. Clara, you own the company. Ethan Vail has been running a company he doesn't legally control for 6 years. Clara's hands started shaking. What happens to him? The board is meeting today. Emergency session. They're voting on whether to remove him as CEO pending further investigation. Diane paused. You should be there. You have a right to be there. I'm not… Clara couldn't find words. You're a majority shareholder. You have more right to be in that room than anyone except Jamie. Get dressed. I'll pick you up in an hour. The board meeting was held in Vail Technologies' downtown headquarters. a gleaming tower of glass and steel that represented everything Ethan had built on her father's stolen legacy. Security tried to stop Clara at the door. Diane showed them documentation, legal proof that Clara Hayes was not just some protester, but a shareholder with legal standing. They let her through. The boardroom was on the 40th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showing Chicago spread out below like a conquered kingdom. 12 board members sat around a massive table, and at the head, looking like he hadn't slept in days, sat Ethan Vale. He saw Clara and his face went hard. "What is she doing here?" "Miss Hayes is a shareholder," the board chairman said. His name was Richard Chen, a gray-haired man who looked uncomfortable with the whole situation. "She has a right to attend." "This is a closed session." With the shareholder present, Richard gestured to a chair. "Please sit, Miss Hayes." Clara sat. The leather chair was too big, too expensive, too everything. She felt like a child at the adults' table. But she was here, in the room where decisions were made, where her father had once sat. Richard cleared his throat. "Let's begin. We've all seen the audit results. The findings are troubling. The share transfers that gave Mr. Vale majority control appear to have irregularities." "Appear?" Ethan's voice was sharp. "Or do?" "Do." Richard looked pained. "The forensic accountants found evidence of forged signatures, backdated documents, transfers that violated corporate bylaws." "This is a witch hunt," Ethan said, "based on decades-old documents and testimony from a dying man who admitted he was unreliable." "Walter Bramwell admitted he was a coward," Clara spoke up. Her voice sounded small in that big room. "Not that he was unreliable. There's a difference." Ethan turned to her. "You have no place here." "I have every place here. This company was built by my father. You stole it, and now everyone knows." "I built this company from nothing." "From my father's work." Clara stood. Her chair rolled backward. "You took his ideas, his patents, his life's work, and you slapped your name on it. But it was never yours. It was never yours." The room fell silent. Richard spoke carefully. "The audit also revealed that Margaret Hayes' ownership stake was never legally transferred, which means her estate, specifically her children, retained controlling interest in this company." One of the board members, a woman in her 60s, leaned forward. "Are you saying this girl owns Vale Technologies?" "I'm saying she and her brother own 48%. Yes. Combined with Walter Bramwell's remaining shares, they control the majority." Ethan's face had gone white. "This is insane. You can't just—" "We can and we are," Richard interrupted. "The audit is clear. Your acquisition of controlling shares was fraudulent, which means every decision made under that authority is questionable." "I've run this company for 6 years. I've increased value by 300%. You've lied." Walter's voice came from the doorway. He stood there leaning on a cane, looking half dead but determined. "You've lied to this board, to your investors, to the world. And now it's over." Ethan stood. "You have no authority here anymore, Walter." "No, but she does." Walter gestured to Clara. "And I think it's time she used it." Every eye turned to Clara. She looked at Ethan, at the man who'd killed her father, who'd destroyed her family, who'd spent 6 years living a lie. "I want you removed," Clara said quietly. "As CEO, as board member, as anything connected to this company, I want you gone." "You can't do that," Ethan said, but his voice wavered. "Actually, she can," Richard said. "As majority shareholder, she has the authority to call for a vote, to remove you from your position." This board won't. "This board will do what's legal," Richard interrupted. "We've already consulted with counsel. Miss Hayes' claim is legitimate. Her ownership is valid. And frankly, Mr. Vale, you've put us all at risk with your fraud." Ethan looked around the table, at the people he'd worked with for years, his allies, his friends. Not one of them met his eyes. "Then I quit," Ethan said. "You want me gone? Fine. I'm gone. But this company will collapse without me. The stock will tank, investors will flee. You'll all lose everything." "Maybe," Clara said, "but at least it'll be the truth." Ethan grabbed his briefcase, headed for the door, then stopped and looked back at Clara. "You think you've won," he said, "but you've just destroyed yourself. You have no idea how to run a company. You'll fail. And when you do, everyone will know it was your fault." Maybe, Clara agreed, but I'd rather fail trying to do the right thing than succeed by doing what you did. Ethan left. The door closed behind him with a soft click. The boardroom stayed silent for a long moment. Then Richard spoke. Well, that's done. Now we need to discuss transition. Miss Hayes, you'll need to appoint an interim CEO while we sort out— Walter, Clara said. Everyone looked at her. Walter Bramwell. He was one of the original founders. He knows this company better than anyone. He should run it. Walter shook his head. Clara, I'm dying. I can't. Then run it for whatever time you have left. Fix what Ethan broke. Make it what my father wanted it to be. Clara looked at him. Please. Walter's eyes were wet. Okay. I'll do it. The board meeting continued for another hour. Legal details, transition plans, 1,000 things Clara didn't understand. But she'd done it. She'd removed Ethan Vale from power. She'd taken back what he'd stolen. Outside the building, Clara stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the Vale Technologies tower. Soon, there'd be a new name on it. Hayes Technologies, maybe. Or something that honored her father properly. Her phone rang. The care facility. Miss Hayes, it's Rita. I wanted to let you know we've reversed the termination decision. Jamie can stay as long as he needs. Clara closed her eyes. Thank you. Actually, you should thank Mr. Chen, the board chairman. He called personally, said Vale Technologies would be covering all of Jamie's medical expenses going forward. Full support, indefinitely. Clara couldn't speak. Miss Hayes, are you there? I'm here. Thank you. Thank you. She hung up and let herself cry on a downtown Chicago sidewalk while business people streamed past. She'd done it. Against impossible odds, with nothing but truth and stubbornness, she'd done it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Diane. You did good, kid. Your father would be proud. Clara looked at the message and finally let herself believe it might be true. The news broke within an hour. Ethan Vale removed as CEO amid fraud scandal. Every major outlet picked it up. Social media exploded. The stock price dropped 15% in the first 30 minutes of trading, then stabilized as investors realized the company itself was still sound, just under different management. Clara watched it all unfold from Diane's office, her phone buzzing nonstop with interview requests she had no intention of accepting. She felt numb, disconnected, like she was watching someone else's victory play out on screens that had nothing to do with her. You should go home, Diane said. Get some rest. This is just the beginning. There'll be months of legal cleanup, shareholder meetings, restructuring. You need to pace yourself. But Clara didn't have a home anymore. The eviction notice was still active. Her apartment was still trashed. Everything she owned fit in 2 suitcases she'd packed that morning. I need to see Jamie first, Clara said. Diane drove her to the facility. The route was familiar now, worn into Clara's memory from 6 years of weekly visits. But today felt different. Today she wasn't visiting her broken brother with empty hands and hollow promises. Today she had something real to offer. Rita met her at the entrance with a smile that actually reached her eyes. He's having a good day, she said. Very alert. He saw you on the news, keeps asking when you're coming. Clara found Jamie in the common room, sitting upright for once instead of slouched in that defeated way he usually held himself. When he saw her, his whole face lit up. You did it, he said. The words came out clear, strong. Clara, you actually did it. She sat next to him, took his hand. We did it. You told me to fight, so I fought. I saw him on TV, Ethan. He looked scared. Jamie squeezed her hand. Did you see it? Did you see him scared? Yeah, I saw it. Good. He should be scared. He should know what it feels like. Jamie's expression shifted, something dark crossing his face. I remember more now. Since you started fighting, like my brain was waiting for you to be strong enough to handle it. Clara's chest tightened. Remember what? The accident. Mom screaming. Dad trying to turn the wheel, but it wouldn't move. Like someone cut the... He stopped, breathing hard. I remember the tree coming, and Mom screaming, and then nothing. Just hospital lights and pain and you crying. Tears streamed down Clara's face. Jamie, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. You saved me. You spent 6 years keeping me alive when it would have been easier to just... He couldn't finish. You saved me, and then you saved Dad's memory. That matters, Clara. That has to matter. They sat together in silence, holding hands, while the TV played some game show neither of them watched. Outside, Chicago went about its business. Inside, two people who'd lost everything were trying to figure out what having something back actually meant. A nurse came by with Jamie's medication. He took it without complaint, which meant he really was having a good day. "They said you're paying for everything now," Jamie said after the nurse left. "The facility, the doctors, everything. The company's paying. It's complicated." "You own a company." Jamie laughed. It was a rusty sound, like machinery that hadn't run in years. "My sister owns $1 billion company. That's insane." "I own shares. I don't know what I'm doing with them yet." "You'll figure it out. You always do." Jamie's eyes were drifting now, the medication pulling him towards sleep. "Promise me something. Anything. Don't let them make you like Ethan. Don't let having power turn you into someone who hurts people." His voice was fading. "Stay you. Stay Clara who fights even when she's scared. Stay the person who cared more about truth than money." "I promise," Clara whispered. But Jamie was already asleep. Clara stayed until visiting hours ended, watching her brother breathe and trying to reconcile the broken man in front of her with the sharp kid he'd been before. The doctor said there might be surgeries that could help. Therapies. Treatments that were experimental but promising. The kind of care that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and had been completely out of reach until yesterday. Now it was all possible. Now Jamie had a chance. Clara left the facility as the sun set, painting Chicago in shades of orange and gold. Her phone rang. Walter. "Where are you?" he asked. He sounded tired. "Just left Jamie's place. Why?" "Because we need to talk. About what comes next." A pause. "Can you come to my office?" Clara took the train downtown, watching the city transform from residential neighborhoods to commercial districts to the gleaming towers of the Loop. She'd made this journey thousands of times over the years, always as someone passing through, someone who didn't belong in these spaces where money and power lived. Now she owned one of those towers. The thought made her nauseous. Walter's office was dark except for the desk lamp. He sat behind piles of paperwork, looking older and frailer than he had at the board meeting. The cancer was eating him from the inside. Everyone could see it. "Sit," he said. Clara sat. Walter pushed a folder across the desk. "This is the company's current status. Financial reports, active projects, pending litigation, everything you need to know as majority shareholder." Clara opened the folder and saw numbers that didn't make sense. Millions, billions, columns of data that might as well have been written in another language. "I don't understand any of this," she admitted. "You'll learn, or you'll hire people who do." Walter leaned back. "But first, we need to talk about what you want, what your actual goal is here." "I wanted justice for my father." "You got that. Ethan's gone. His reputation is destroyed. The truth is out there." Walter studied her. "But now you have to decide what to do with what you won. You can sell your shares, take the money, walk away. You'd be set for life, so would Jamie. Or you actually try to run this company, turn it into what your father wanted it to be. Use the power you just won to do something good." Walter's voice was gentle. "But that's harder, Clara. That means learning a whole new world, making decisions that affect thousands of employees, living with the fact that you can't make everyone happy." Clara looked at the folder, at the weight of responsibility it represented. What did my father want? For the company, I mean. What was his vision? Walter smiled. He wanted technology that helped people, not just made money. He used to say the whole point of building something was making the world slightly less broken. He pulled out an old document, yellowed with age. This was his original mission statement: Hayes and Bramwell Technologies, innovation in service of humanity. Clara read the words her father had written maybe 15 years ago, before Ethan, before the betrayal, when he'd still believed building something good was possible. Ethan changed it, Walter continued, made it about disruption and market dominance and all the usual tech company garbage. But we can change it back. We can make this company what your father dreamed it could be. I don't know how to run a company. Neither did your father when he started. Neither did I. Walter coughed, a wet rattling sound. But he learned, and you will too. You're smarter than you think, Clara. You took down a billionaire with nothing but documents and courage. Running a company might actually be easier. Clara laughed despite herself. I doubt that. Then doubt it while trying anyway. Walter's expression turned serious. I have maybe 4 months left. 5 if I'm lucky. I can use that time to teach you everything I know. Introduce you to the right people. Set up structures so you have support. But after that, you're on your own. The weight of it pressed down on Clara. She'd spent 6 years just trying to survive, just trying to keep Jamie alive and herself functioning. Now she was supposed to lead a company worth billions? What if I fail? She asked quietly. Then you fail. But at least you failed trying to do something meaningful. Walter pulled out another document. This is my resignation as interim CEO. It takes effect in 4 months. When I die, the board will need to appoint a permanent replacement. I'm not qualified, I'm recommending you. Walter slid the paper across the desk. Not because you know anything about running a company, but because you give a damn. Because you proved you'd rather lose everything than compromise your integrity. That's rarer than you think in this world. Clara stared at the document, at her father's name in the company letterhead, at the opportunity to finish what he'd started. I need time to think, she said. You have until tomorrow morning. The board wants answers. The shareholders want direction. The employees want to know if they still have jobs. Walter's voice was kind but firm. Welcome to power, Clara. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. Clara left Walter's office with the folder under her arm and her mind spinning. She walked through downtown Chicago as the city lit up for the night, watching people stream out of office buildings and into bars and restaurants. Normal people with normal lives who didn't have to make decisions that affected thousands. She envied them. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You destroyed me. I hope you're happy. Ethan. Clara stopped walking, stared at the message. Part of her wanted to ignore it. Part of her wanted to block the number and never think about him again. But a bigger part needed to respond. She typed, I'm not happy, but I'm done being scared of you. The response came quickly. You think you've won, but you just inherited a company you can't run. You'll fail within a year and everyone will know it was your fault. Clara thought about that. About the very real possibility that Ethan was right. That she'd take this company her father built and drive it into the ground because she had no idea what she was doing. Maybe, she typed back, but at least I'll fail honestly. At least I won't build my success on someone else's grave. She blocked the number before he could respond. The next morning, Clara stood outside the Hayes Technologies building. They'd already changed the sign, working overnight to remove Ethan's name, and tried to find the courage to walk inside. She was wearing a suit Diane had helped her buy yesterday. Nothing fancy, just something that made her look less like a waitress and more like someone who belonged in boardrooms. The fabric felt wrong against her skin, too stiff, too expensive, too much like plain dress-up. But she walked in anyway. The lobby was massive, marble floors, modern art on the walls, a reception desk where 2 people in matching blazers smiled at visitors like they were genuinely happy to see them. One of them recognized Clara. Miss Hayes, Mr. Bramwell is expecting you. 40th floor. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should. Clara watched the numbers climb and tried to remember how to breathe. When the doors opened, Walter was waiting. Ready? He asked. No. Good. Being ready is overrated. He led her down a hallway lined with photos. The company's history. Her father's face appeared in several, young and hopeful and alive. The executive team is gathered. They want to meet you, hear your vision. I don't have a vision. Then make one up. That's what everyone else does. Walter stopped outside a conference room. Look, these people are scared. Ethan ran this company like a tyrant. They're worried you'll do the same, or worse, that you'll sell everything off and they'll lose their jobs. Show them you're human. Show them you care. The rest you can figure out later. Clara took a breath and walked into the room. 12 people sat around the table. Department heads, senior executives, the people who actually kept the company running while Ethan took credit. They all looked at Clara with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism to barely concealed hostility. Walter made introductions. Chief Technology Officer, Chief Financial Officer, VP of Operations. The names blurred together. Clara sat at the head of the table, her father's chair, she realized, and looked at these strangers who were now her responsibility. I don't know what I'm doing, she said. The room went silent. I'm not going to pretend I understand how to run a tech company. I worked as a waitress until a week ago. I barely know how to use Excel. Clara met their eyes. But I know what this company was supposed to be. I know my father built it to help people. And I know Ethan turned it into something my father wouldn't recognize. The CFO, a woman in her 50s named Sarah, leaned forward. So what's your plan? To reverse every decision Ethan made? That would tank our quarterly earnings. I don't care about quarterly earnings. Sarah blinked. Excuse me? I care about building something that matters, something that helps people. If that makes less money, fine. If shareholders don't like it, they can sell. Clara felt herself warming to this. My father died trying to protect this company's integrity. I'm not going to honor that by chasing profit at any cost. The VP of Operations, a younger man named David, spoke up. That's idealistic, but we have responsibilities. Employees who depend on their paychecks, investors who expect returns. Then we'll find a way to do both. We'll build technology that helps people and makes money doing it. Clara pulled out the mission statement Walter had given her. Innovation in service of humanity. That's what we're going back to. That's non-negotiable. The room stayed quiet for a moment. Then Sarah smiled. Your father used to say the same thing, word for word. She looked at the others. I think we can work with this. The meeting lasted 3 hours. They walked Clara through the company's major projects, explained which ones aligned with her father's vision and which ones were pure Ethan, profit-driven ventures that did nothing except make rich people richer. Clara asked questions. Stupid questions, probably. But the executives answered patiently, warming to her gradually as they realized she was genuinely trying to understand. By the end, they had a plan. Cancel the projects that were purely exploitative. Double down on the ones that actually helped people. Take the short-term hit to profits in exchange for long-term sustainability and purpose. The shareholders won't like it, Sarah warned. The shareholders can vote me out if they want, Clara said. But while I'm here, we're doing this right. Walter walked her out after the meeting ended. You did good in there, he said. Better than I expected. I have no idea what I'm doing. Nobody does. That's the secret they don't tell you. Everyone's just making it up as they go. Walter stopped at his office door. But you have something Ethan never had. You actually care about people more than power. That'll take you further than you think. Over the next 4 months, Clara learned what it meant to run a company. She worked 16-hour days, studied everything she could about technology, business, leadership, made mistakes that cost money, and learned from them. Hired people smarter than her and actually listened when they offered advice. She moved into a modest apartment near the office. Nothing fancy, just a place to sleep between meetings and emergency phone calls and all the chaos of trying to transform a company's culture. She visited Jamie every Sunday without fail, brought him updates on the company, on the new therapies they were trying, on the slow, painful progress toward getting him back. Some weeks he knew who she was. Some weeks he didn't. But the doctors said he was improving, slowly, the kind of slowly that required patience Clara barely had. Walter declined faster than expected. 3 months instead of 4. He came to the office less and less, working from home when he could work at all. Clara visited him there, sitting by his bed while he explained corporate strategies and warned her about people who'd try to take advantage. You're ready, he said during one of their last conversations. More ready than you think. I'm terrified. Good. Terror keeps you honest. Walter smiled. It was thin and weak but genuine. Your father would be proud, Clara, of what you've become, of what you're building. I wish he could see it. Maybe he can. Who knows? Walter closed his eyes. When I die, don't make a big deal of it. No elaborate funeral. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep making this company matter. I will. Promise me. I promise. Walter died 2 weeks later, quietly, in his sleep, the way he'd wanted. The funeral was small, despite Clara's promise. The board insisted on something public, a memorial service that honored Walter's contributions. Clara spoke briefly, keeping her composure until she talked about how Walter had chosen courage over cowardice in his final months. Then she cried in front of 500 people and didn't care who saw. After Walter's death, the board voted Clara in as permanent CEO. Not unanimously. Some members thought she was too young, too inexperienced, too risky, but enough believed in her vision to make it happen. At 30 years old, Clara Hayes became the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. The press had a field day. From waitress to CEO, the Cinderella story of Clara Hayes. She hated the coverage. Hated being called Cinderella, like she'd been rescued by some fairy godmother instead of fighting for everything she'd won. But she used the attention, talked about her father's vision, about building technology that helped people instead of exploiting them, about the responsibility that came with power. Some people listened. Some people called her naive. She kept working anyway. 6 months into her tenure as CEO, Hayes Technologies launched a new initiative, affordable medical technology for underserved communities, AI-powered diagnostic tools that could work in areas without specialists. Exactly the kind of innovation her father had dreamed about. The stock price dipped. Shareholders complained. Analysts predicted disaster. Clara ignored them and kept building. A year after removing Ethan from power, Clara returned to the Meridian. She'd been invited to a tech industry dinner, the kind of event where powerful people gathered to network and pretend they cared about innovation. She'd tried to decline, but her PR team convinced her it was important for the company's image. So she put on a dress that cost more than her old monthly rent and walked into the restaurant where this had all started. Dennis, her old manager, was still there. He did a double take when he saw her. Clara, Miss Hayes, I didn't know you'd be... It's fine, Dennis. You can call me Clara. She smiled. How have you been? Good. I'm sorry about before. About firing you. I didn't know... You were just doing your job. I don't blame you. Clara looked around the restaurant. The same crystal chandeliers, the same expensive art, the same world she'd once served and now inhabited. Has anything changed here? New head chef. Better wine selection. Dennis hesitated. We saw the news about everything. You're incredible. What you did. I just told the truth. Yeah, but most people don't. Most people take the money and stay quiet. Dennis looked like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. Your table's ready. Number 12. Of course it was. Clara walked to table 12 and sat down. The same table where Ethan had yelled at her over spilled wine, where she'd recognized the man who destroyed her family, where everything had started. Her dinner companions arrived. Other tech CEOs, investors, people who shaped the industry. They treated her with cautious respect, still not sure if she was a fluke or someone who'd last. Clara played the game, made small talk, discussed market trends and upcoming technologies. But part of her was still that waitress, watching these people and wondering how many of them had their own Ethans, their own buried secrets. Halfway through dinner, she saw him. Ethan Vale, sitting 3 tables away with people Clara didn't recognize. He'd lost weight, looked older. The confidence was gone, replaced by something harder and more desperate. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither looked away. Then Ethan stood and walked over. Clara's companions went quiet. Everyone knew the history. Clara, Ethan said. His voice was different, smaller. Can we talk? Just for a minute. She should have said no, should have had security remove him. But curiosity won. You have 2 minutes, she said. Ethan gestured to an empty seat. Clara nodded. He sat. I wanted to say... He stopped, started again. You were right. About everything. I did steal from your father. I did cover it up, and I've spent the last year watching everything I built disappear because I couldn't admit that. Clara waited. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Ethan continued. I know I don't deserve that. But I wanted you to know I'm not fighting anymore. The lawsuits, the countersuits, I'm dropping all of it. You won. Completely. Why tell me this? Because I'm tired. Ethan looked exhausted, defeated. Tired of lying. Tired of pretending. Tired of being the person I became. He met her eyes. You could have taken my offer. $5 million. You'd be set for life and I'd still be on top. But you chose truth over money. That takes something I never had. Integrity, Clara said quietly. Yeah, that. Ethan stood. Your father was a better man than me, and you're better than both of us. Build something good, Clara. Build what he would have built. He walked away before she could respond. Clara sat there processing what had just happened. An apology? Absolution? or just a defeated man trying to find peace before disappearing into obscurity? She didn't know. Didn't care, really. Ethan Vale's story was over. Hers was just beginning. 2 years after becoming CEO, Clara stood in front of a crowd at a medical conference in Boston. Behind her, a screen showed the results of Hayes Technologies' affordable diagnostic AI. Communities in rural America and developing countries using technology that detected diseases early and saved lives. My father used to say that innovation without humanity is just expensive noise, Clara told the audience. He believed technology should serve people, not the other way around. For too long, this company lost sight of that. We chased profit. We built things that made rich people richer while everyone else struggled. She clicked to the next slide. Jamie's face filled the screen, not how he'd been after the accident, broken and lost, but recent footage of him in therapy, relearning how to speak clearly, how to write, how to be himself again. This is my brother Jamie. 6 years ago, an accident took away most of who he was. We couldn't afford the care that might have helped him, couldn't access the technology that might have made a difference. Clara's voice stayed steady. But now, because of what this company is building, families like mine have options, have hope. The audience applauded. Clara finished her presentation and fielded questions about scalability and profit margins and all the practical concerns of running a purpose-driven business. She had answers now. Good ones. The kind that came from 2 years of learning and failing and learning again. After the conference, she took a car to the Neurological Institute where Jamie was undergoing intensive therapy. The building was modern, full of natural light, and the quiet efficiency of people who knew what they were doing. Jamie was in a common room working with a speech therapist. When he saw Clara, he smiled. "Hey," he said. The word came out clear and strong. "Hey, yourself." Clara sat next to him. "How's it going?" "Good. Dr. Martinez thinks I can start working on writing again. Real writing, not just copying letters." Jamie's enthusiasm was back. Not all the way, but enough to recognize. She said maybe in 6 months I could try taking a class. Online probably, but still. "That's amazing, Jamie. It's because of you, because you fought." Jamie took her hand. "I remember more now. Almost everything before the accident, and I remember you coming every week even when I didn't know who you were. Even when it would have been easier to just let me go." Clara's throat closed up. "I need to tell you something," Jamie continued. "I've been working on this with Dr. Martinez, practicing." He took a breath. "Thank you. For not giving up on me. For not giving up on Dad's memory. For being stronger than anyone should have to be." "You don't have to thank me." "Yeah, I do, because I was too broken to say it before. But I'm saying it now." Jamie smiled. "You saved me, Clara. And then you saved a whole company. And now you're saving people you'll never meet. That matters. That has to matter." They sat together in that bright room, two people who'd lost everything and somehow found their way back to something like whole. Before Clara left, Jamie's therapist pulled her aside. "He's made remarkable progress," Dr. Martinez said. "Better than we expected. The new neural stimulation therapy is working, and honestly, I think having you succeed the way you have, it's given him motivation, a reason to fight for himself." "Will he ever be—" Clara stopped. "Will he ever be who he was before? No. That Jamie is gone." Dr. Martinez's voice was gentle but honest. "But the Jamie he's becoming? That's someone worth knowing too. Someone who's fought for every word, every memory, every piece of himself. That kind of strength changes a person." Clara understood that better than anyone. 3 years after this board meeting that changed everything, Hayes Technologies was profitable again. Not Ethan-level profitable. Not built on exploitation and greed, but sustainable, growing, making a difference. Clara had learned how to navigate board meetings and shareholder calls, how to balance purpose with profit, how to lead without losing herself. She'd also learned that power didn't make you invincible. It just gave you better tools to help people and more ways to fail when you tried. On the anniversary of her father's death, Clara visited his grave for the first time in years. She'd avoided it after her mother died. Too painful. Too full of guilt and grief and all the things she hadn't said. But today felt right. The cemetery was quiet, cold. Chicago in November, gray and unforgiving. Her father's headstone was simple. Robert Hayes, beloved husband and father. innovator and dreamer. Clara knelt and touched the cold stone. "I did it, Dad," she said quietly. "I took back what Ethan stole. Made the company what you wanted it to be." She smiled through tears. "Jamie's getting better, slowly, but he's fighting, just like you taught us." The wind picked up, scattering leaves across the graves. "I don't know if you can hear me," Clara continued. "I don't know if any of this matters beyond just making me feel better. But I needed to tell you, needed you to know that you didn't die for nothing, that what you were trying to protect, it survived. We survived." She stayed until the cold became unbearable, then drove back to the office where meetings and decisions and the endless work of building something good waited for her. That night, Clara stood in her apartment, bigger now, but still modest by CEO standards, and looked out at Chicago glittering below. She thought about the journey from Waitress to this, from nobody to somebody, from scared and silent to powerful and heard. It hadn't fixed everything. Jamie was still broken in ways that couldn't be unbroken. Her parents were still dead. 6 years of struggle and pain couldn't be erased by success. But she'd proven something important. That truth mattered more than power. That one person standing up could start a chain reaction. That being nobody didn't mean accepting injustice. Her phone buzzed. A message from the company's legal team. Ethan Vale had filed for bankruptcy. His reputation destroyed, his fortune gone, his future reduced to whatever he could rebuild from ashes of his own making. Clara read the message and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction. Just the understanding that Ethan's story was finished while hers continued. She deleted the message and opened her calendar. Tomorrow. Product launch for the new educational AI that would bring quality tutoring to underfunded schools. Next week. Testimony before Congress about tech regulation and corporate responsibility. Next month. Jamie's first day in an online journalism class. The work never ended. The challenges never stopped. But for the first time in 6 years, Clara Hayes wasn't just surviving. She was living, building, creating something that mattered. And maybe that was justice, not revenge or punishment or watching your enemies burn, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing you'd turned pain into purpose. That you'd looked at the world's cruelty and decided to make it slightly less broken. That you'd refused to disappear even when disappearing would have been easier. Clara closed her laptop and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new fights, new challenges, new chances to fail or succeed. But tonight, she could rest knowing she'd kept her promise. To her father, to Jamie, to herself. She'd finished what Robert Hayes started. And in doing so, she'd become exactly who she was always meant to be. Not a waitress or a victim or a nobody, just Clara Hayes. Imperfect, stubborn, and absolutely unwilling to let the powerful get away with destroying the powerless. In the end, that was enough. It had to be. Because the alternative, giving up, staying quiet, accepting that people like Ethan Vale always won, was a world Clara refused to live in, so she'd built a different one instead. One truth at a time, one fight at a time, one person who decided to matter, even when the world told them they didn't. And maybe that was the real story. Not the money or the company or the dramatic takedown of a billionaire, just the simple radical act of refusing to stay invisible, of insisting that your voice mattered, that your pain had purpose, that being human meant fighting for what was right, even when fighting seemed impossible. Clara fell asleep with that thought, and for the first time in 6 years, she didn't dream of crashes or funerals or all the things she'd lost. She dreamed of tomorrow, and all the tomorrows after that, and somewhere, in whatever place the dead go when they leave us, Robert Hayes smiled, because his daughter had learned what he'd tried to teach her, that doing the right thing usually meant doing the hard thing, and that the choice of who you wanted to be was the only choice that really mattered. Clara had made hers, and the world was different because of it.